Cayo Perico is arguably the easiest heist in all of GTA Online because you can do it solo, and you only need to do a bare minimum of 5 setups, and then the actual heist only takes you about 7 minutes if you're very fast about it. So of course, I thought about putting a twist on it, trying to go from start to finish without taking out a single person. Now if this sounds familiar, it's because the big GTA 5 YouTuber Dark Viper AU has done this with the story mode, or at least he tried to anyway. Spoilers, he did have to take out at least 96 enemies because he was forced to do so. Now it is my goal in this video to take out absolutely nobody in this Cayo Perico heist. Unfortunately, you're gonna have to wait to see later in the video if I'm gonna be able to accomplish that or not. So I hope you enjoy, and let's get started with the first setup being the gather intel. Now I had already had a hurdle to cross, being the enemies that were at the plane I needed to take to go to Cayo Perico. Usually, all I would do is just blow them up with my Sparrow once I got to the plane. Very simple and straightforward. But I couldn't really do that because I was being a pacifist. So the original plan was to hope they would follow me up to the road, and these guys just did not want to move. They were really persistent on just standing there and shooting me with no cover at all. So the second plan of action was to call the police.
This is 911. What emergency service do you require? Thank you. Police officers are en route to your current location.
In this game, they're very lethal. They will shoot anybody. Even if you stare at them for too long, they will literally pull out their gun and kill you. So I knew I could rely on police officers. But you can't always rely on them when you call them though, because once they arrived, they kind of just started driving away from me. I had to catch up to them, and they were speeding. They were just gone and out of there. But I caught up to them, hit the car, got the cops, and this is actually kind of a smart idea because I can get even more stars having more cops to take out the enemies that were in the way already. And luckily, I didn't need many because the enemies I needed to kill were very incompetent. They couldn't even shoot a single police officer. And so the police took them out with absolutely no problem. I was very happy when that happened. They look to be all dead now. And once they were done taking out all the enemies, I just had to lose the cops, and I didn't want to call Lester because I feel like that's just a cheap way to get out of that, and I wanted this to be as authentic as possible, and I'm pretty sure you can't even call Lester in these missions anyway. But once I lost them, I had to now get in the plane and head to Cayo Perico. And during my journey there, I found out there's actually a timer on this mission. Oh, of a time? Oh my god. When I'm arriving to the island, I checked for the secondary targets specifically on the airstrip because I wanted to fill the bag in the heist for a little bit more challenge and money, and because I think this is the only place in the entire island where I could get the secondary targets without getting caught or taking out a single guard. Now checking in the hangar first, unfortunately I had 3 cash targets, which is really unfortunate because you need at least 4 to fill your bag, but I went ahead and went across the street. I don't know what you call an airstrip if you're crossing it. I found out there was 2 stashes of weed there as well. So if I needed to, I could go over to those, but at the moment, I didn't know if I could actually access those in the heist, so we'll leave that for later. I somehow, some way, launched in the air, landed on a bush, and lost my bike. Where did my bike go? I was sitting here for a solid 2 minutes, running around, trying to figure out where my bike went because it couldn't have gone far, and this thing was blending in with the grass very, very well. Hell, I couldn't see it at all, and I was like, there's no way it would across the entire island from that. I mean, literally just dropped straight to the ground, and once I pressed Y, my character just went straight to it, and I couldn't even see it when they were picking it up. It was insane. But eventually I got to the signal box, and while I was hacking the signal box, I had to hope for anything but bearer bonds because that requires you to take out at least 1 guy in one of the setups. But luckily, I got Tequila, which is one of the targets that I actually wanted. And after I figured all that out, well, I just jumped off the tower, took my own life, and went back to Los Santos. First prep I had to do for this heist was get a Fingerprint Cloner. Now, I already knew going into this, it was going to be a pain in the ass. Now, the first thing I had to do was head over to a warehouse, and there was cameras outside of it, so I had to make sure to take out the circuit box that was there so the cameras wouldn't detect me. Of course, I fell off my oppressor trying to do this. Oh, okay then. But once I turned it off, walked in the building undetected, it didn't even matter anyway because I got detected walking literally like 2 feet forward. Oh, they saw me. Now, while I was in here, I didn't have a lot of options to choose from. My first thought was for them to shoot at the bike that is right in front of me, and they were actually doing it. But I didn't think that would work, so the second thought I had was for them to try and shoot each other. Usually this would work, But this is GTA Online, so a lot of the time the enemies cannot take each other out like they can in story mode, so that quickly was thrown out the window. Now the biggest problem I also faced was they all had assault shotguns, so if I just ran out there, I would die immediately. Go! That did not work. And for some reason, I tried to do it again and instantly got killed. Okay. And the third thought I had was to buy ballistic equipment for $500,000. I don't even know why I did this, because I quickly learned I'm not even able to go into it inside of the mission. So we really only had one real option, which is them to shoot the bikes and hopefully it blows up, blowing up the rest of the bikes and the ATV in there, and it would blow all of them up. Now the reason why I didn't think this would work is because the bike was not falling over, and with my experience in the game, vehicles that do not move at all when they're shot by NPCs usually means that there has to be player interaction with that vehicle before it can be damaged in any way. So I immediately thought, this isn't going to work, the bike's not going to catch fire, it's not going to blow up, and I'm probably going to have to take someone out in this setup. But with enough shots fired, the bike started smoking, and I was like, okay, this means this setup is doable without taking out a single person. And then, a couple shots later, it blew up, taking out every single guy in there. And the rest was a piece of cake. I hacked the computer, entering the Panther's code, went over to the other warehouse that was located on the map, grabbed the Fingerprint Cloner inside the warehouse, and just returned to my Kasatka. That is the first prep off of the list. The plasma cutter was the second setup I had to do. Now this was basically the reverse of the Fingerprint Cloner. Instead of taking out guys inside of a building, I'd take them out outside. But the first part is I had to go to a safe house and take a picture of a board that tells me where the plasma cutter is. And once I was leaving the safe house, there was actually a really weird glitch on my screen of the oppressor not being horizontal on the map. It looked very strange. It was like taking a nap or something. I don't know what was going on here. I have never seen this glitch before. But once I got to the destination where the plasma cutter is, I didn't have any good ideas as to how I was going to get it. Usually, I would just fly in there with an oppressor, blow everyone up, take the plasma cutter and leave, obviously. But I can't really do that because I can't take anybody out, and even if I try to be as safe as I could with the armored Kuruma and drive in there without taking out anybody, would be very, very difficult. But in the end, it doesn't matter because some dude trying to be an insurance fraud accidentally hit my car and took his own life out in the process. But technically, I didn't take anybody out. The dude kind of offed himself, but unfortunately, I had direct contact with his death, so I had to restart the setup. And this was thankfully a blessing in disguise. Now this time, when I got to the plasma cutter, there was two different ways of getting inside there. All I had to do was drive my armored Kuruma inside of there without hitting anybody. I would pick up the plasma cutter and head over to Makasaka with a helicopter. Now I did jump out of my helicopter. It did go into the ocean, potentially killing sea life. That fortunately doesn't exist in the game, so I think we're a-okay there. But that's the second setup finished. By far the easiest setup I had in this entire video was the cutting torch. Usually how this works is you go to a construction zone and have to look for a cutting torch inside of multiple different boxes scattered throughout that area. Now you have two options. Take out all the guards there. Obviously we can't do that. We're a passive player right now. Or put on a hard hat and blend with the workers there, and as long as you're not in the cone of vision of the bodyguards for too long, you will not be detected. So of course what I did was put the hard hat on. And two, I had to look for the cutting torch, and I got so lucky that the first box I looked in, it was right there. Now looking back, I think that was kind of a little bit too lucky, because the next setup I actually spent 2 hours trying to figure out how to do it, so let's just move over to that one real fast. So far I was pretty lucky. I didn't have to take out anybody yet, and the weapons prep, no matter what you do, it almost forces you to take out people. And there's 2 different variations of this mission that you can get, and I had thought one of them was just off the charts. And the one I was going for is where you had to break inside of a building and usually take out a lot of guys. Now, I was actually very, very lost as to how I should even approach this. My first thought was, of course, just running in there. Of course, that wouldn't work. The only hope is this door. A bulletproof door. I will never leave the door. Door never leaves me. He can shoot through the door! And my main objective was to try and get in the accommodation room that's straight to the left as soon as you enter the bulletproof doors. And this is kind of like my safe room, except when I died again. Go. Insta-death. I tried using a stun gun on the dude with the assault shotgun because he was the main source of damage that was being taken. And once I stunned him, I was able to interact with the gun locker, moving me on to the next step of hacking the computer. But unfortunately, this guy died from the stun gun, which crosses that option off of the list. I tried shooting a guy in the foot, and unfortunately, one little love tap from a bullet in your foot kills you as well. I did find a bathroom though, which is pretty cool. Hey, it's a toilet. There's a bathroom. There's my character. I tried going the other way. That quickly did not work. Okay. And the best plan I could come up with is trying to manipulate where the enemies go. It was kind of working slightly, like if I ran out in the middle, they killed me. Sometimes they would move towards my dead body, moving them away from the gun locker, but then they would eventually just go back to the normal spots anyway, so it was just kind of a waste of time. I was eventually able to take cover behind the desk where the computer was, so I was right next to the computer, and I tried to wait until they reloaded, but didn't work again. They just all shot me as soon as I got up. There was one time I got extremely close to getting in the hacking animation, but when I was doing that, I realized that this animation is just way too long, and I just didn't really see any hope. I did try giving the police a call.
Police officers are en route to your current location.
What? Surprisingly, it also didn't work. The very last thing that gave me any sorts of hope was hoping they would empty all of their ammo from the weapons, so they were pretty much just useless and standing there not doing anything. I was sitting there for a solid 5 minutes with absolutely no progress, and of course there was a timer that popped up just to ruin my entire run and telling me this setup is basically impossible without taking somebody out. Now, I did want to try the other variation of this mission, being Merryweather HQ. Usually you'd have to follow a Valkyrie, but if you did know the different spawn locations this goes to, you can just go check those, figure out which one it's going to, and just wait for it to arrive there instead of, well, flying with it. Now, once it arrived there, I really only thought of one option because I had to take out in total 14 enemies, and the police had to be my best friends once again. Now, I wasn't sure if these guys could be taken out by the police or not, but I was watching the minimap, and eventually it went from 14 to 13. It gave me so much hope for this mission. With enough time, the remaining enemy was taken out, and I now just had to lose the cops. Pretty simple stuff. And this is where the next hurdle comes in this setup. Once I got in the adventure, there was 2 different enemies I knew that were in there, one having an assault shotgun and the other having an assault rifle. What I didn't know is that if you were to die in the Avenger, like I did of course, trying to get the weapons, it spawns you outside of it, and it forces you to blow up the Avenger to make any progress at all. And so at that point, I was like, okay, we can try this again, because if I take out the Avenger, that is at least 2 kills tallied on to my final kill count, which is something I didn't want to quite do. So giving it one more try, I was forced to at least take out one enemy, and luckily the last guy just kind of ran behind the last remaining boxes all the way at the back of the plane, so I could just take the weapons and leave without any trouble. And then just returning the weapons to my Kasatka would be the 4th setup finished. When I first started this challenge, the only setup I had in mind that I could do without taking out a single enemy was this setup, the approach vehicle. Now, the one I usually do is the Longfin. You have to steal a boat out of the impound with a truck cab, and it's usually very simple and straightforward. You could just go in there with like a phantom wedge and just leave with the phantom wedge. Now, it wasn't quite that easy. My original plan was to try and get the police to take me out and hope that the ones at the trailer would despawn. Lo and behold, the cops that spawn in with the mission itself do not just despawn out of nowhere. They are a part of the mission, so they're going to stay there. Now, I tried moving them out of the way a little bit with the phantom wedge to see if they would give me space to get the trailer, and these guys would just not budge an inch. They were determined to stand their ground until they died. I tried driving really far away as well after losing the cops to see if they would despawn that way. It still didn't work, but when I got back to the Longfin, I had realized there was a dead police officer on the ground. I have no idea how he died. You're going to take my word for this. I don't know who killed him, but this kind of gave me hope that, hey, maybe the police officers are taking each other out. But in the process of figuring that out, I also had died again, so just ignore that. But then going back in once again, there was like 3 others dead. So they had to have been taking each other out, which of course gave me all the hope I needed to finish this mission. And with enough finesse, I was able to get the Longfin out of the impound without taking out a single officer. And then after driving very carefully to the destination, I was able to get the Longfin delivered, and all of these setups for the Cayo Perico heist were now finished. And it was time for the actual heist. Now on to the heist. My first priority was to fill my bag with the secondary targets I had scoped out previously. Very straightforward. I just grabbed the 3 cache targets that were inside of the hangar itself. And going for the weed targets was kind of not a great idea because I immediately got spotted by the camera. But in my second attempt, I instead took out the camera and was able to fill my bag up with both of the weed targets instead of all cash, just to get a little bit more money out of this heist. But of course, I still had to fill my bag with an extra cash target, so that's what I did. But once it was filled up, it was now time to break into the compound. Once I got over there, was in the water, and was using the cutting torch to break a gate to go through the drainage tunnel to enter the compound. Now, I did just go the same way I usually go anyway. Of course, avoiding 2 guards I normally would take out by just, going right first, going around them and all that. But once I got up to here, there was 1 guard I didn't really know how to get past, and I didn't know if there was any other way of getting past him besides the way I was doing. So the only option I had was to climb up on the railing and try to hug the wall and make sure I was right outside of his cone of vision so he didn't see me. And I actually got past him this way, which was huge. I walked right past him, and then the last guard that's on the stairs usually, you just walk right past him as well. Piece of cake. Then I went ahead and grabbed the safe money, hacked into the elevator, and of course, grabbed the tequila as the final thing in the heist. Now, I wasn't sure if I could pass the same guard I was concerned about, but I went ahead and just started hugging the wall again, climbed over the railing, and climbed on top of another railing. That was pretty much it. I was able to escape the compound, and usually I would use a bike by this point to escape off the main island, but I didn't really have a choice other than to run all the way to the edge. And once I got in the water, the heist was basically finished. By the end of all of this, the total kill count was 1. I don't know if you could bring it down to 0. You'd have to either have really good RNG or get really good at manipulating where the enemies would walk to in the weapons setup, because that's really the only setup I feel like that would be really, really hard to not take out a single person. But overall, I'd say this challenge was very fun. It gave me a new perspective on the game, and it's just a different way to play. So if you want to try it yourself, maybe you can get it down to 0. And if you got any good ideas I could try this challenge with, I prefer it to be solo challenges, because if I had multiple people helping me with it, it would be even harder, which I guess could be better content. But I don't really have anyone to help me with a challenge like this. That would be really tedious. But that's all I got for you guys for today. So I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you guys in the next video I make. Peace out, everybody. Don't shit talk me in the comments. That would not be very PogChamp of you.